Let the chips fall where they may. Let the chips fall where they may. And what I see all over the place is people who care about looking good while doing evil. Fuck them. Okay?
He said, my mind is a storm. I don't think most people would want to be me. They may think they want to be me, but they don't know. They don't understand.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, in as much as a weather metaphor makes sense, my mind often feels like a very wild storm. I mean, I have a fountain of ideas. I mean, I have more ideas than I can possibly execute. So I have no shortage of ideas. Innovation is not the problem. Execution is the problem.
Is your storm a happy storm?
No.
It's not a happy storm.
No. You know, I think to some degree I was born this way, and then it was amplified by a difficult childhood, frankly. But I can remember even in happy moments when I was a kid that it just feels like there's just a rage of forces in my mind constantly. Now this, productively manifests itself in technology and building things for the most part. So, and I think on balance, the output has been very productive. Anyway, so, I feel like a lot of productive things have been done. And you can also look at Tesla as being sort of many companies in one. Like our supercharging network is, if the Tesla supercharging network were its own company, it would be a Fortune 500 company by itself. Just the supercharging system. We also make the cells. We build the power electronics and the powertrain from scratch. We have the most innovative structural design, the largest castings ever used. We have the best manufacturing technology at Tesla, better manufacturing technology than companies that have been doing it for 100 years. So these demons of the mind, are, for the most part, harnessed to productive ends.
Meaning, what is driving all of this? You're doing all of these things. Do you think that you would be as successful, whatever success is, if it wasn't being driven by I think that there's something you're trying to prove, either to yourself or to somebody. I don't know. We're all trying to prove something. Maybe I'm trying to prove it to my mother. I don't know.
No. If I were to describe my philosophy, it is a philosophy of curiosity. I mean, I did have this existential crisis when I was around 12 about what's the meaning of life? Isn't it all pointless? Why not just commit suicide? Why exist? I read the religious texts. I read the philosophy books especially the German philosophy books, made me quite depressed, frankly. One should not read Schopenhauer and Nietzsche as a teenager. But then I read Douglas Adams' Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which is a book on philosophy in the form of humor. And the point that Adams was making there was that we don't actually know what questions to ask. That's why he said that, the answer is 42. Like, basically, Earth's a giant computer, and it came up with the answer 42. But then to actually figure out what the question is, that's the actual hard part. I think this is generally true also in physics. At the point at which you can properly frame the question, the answer is actually the easy part. So my motivation then was that, well, my life is finite, really a flash in the pan on a galactic time scale. But if we can expand the scope and scale of consciousness, then we are better able to figure out what questions to ask about the answer that is the universe. But I think also that that life has to be more than simply solving one sad problem after another. There have to be reasons where you wake up in the morning and you're happy to be alive. There have to be reasons that you have to say, why are you excited about the future? Like, what gives you hope? And if you're unsure, ask your kids.
The reason I mention this, though, is because you've had this success in the physics world. You now have these very difficult decisions that have huge impacts on the world that are not physical decisions at all. They're decisions of the mind. These are very difficult decisions, and I'm so curious how you think about that. And not just the decisions, the fact that you have that power.
I think it's important for the audience to understand that the reason I have these powers is not because of some anti-competitive actions, it's simply because we've executed very well. I can only do things that are within the bounds of the law. I cannot do beyond that. My aspiration is to do as much good as possible and to be as productive as possible within the bounds of what is legal.
So one of the, I think, most common questions I hear young people, ambitious young people ask is, I want to be the next Elon Musk. How do I do that? Obviously, the next Elon Musk will work on very different things than you did. But what have you done, or what did you do when you were younger that you think sort of set you up to have a big impact?
Well, I think first of all, I should say that I did not expect to be involved in all these things. So the 5 things that I thought about at the time in college, so quite a long time ago, 25 years ago, making life multiplanetary, accelerating the transition to sustainable energy, the internet, broadly speaking, and then genetics and AI. I think I didn't expect to be involved in all of those things. I actually, at the time in college, I sort of thought helping with electrification of cars was how I would start out, and that's actually what I worked on as an intern, was advanced ultracapacitors to see if they would be a breakthrough relative to batteries for energy storage in cars. And then when I came out to go to Stanford, that's what I was going to be doing my grad studies on, was working on advanced energy storage technologies for electric cars. And then I put that on hold to start an internet company in '95, because there does seem to be like a time for particular technologies when they're at a steep point in the inflection curve, and I didn't want to do a PhD at Stanford and watch it all happen, and I wasn't entirely certain that the technology I'd be working on would actually succeed. Like you can get a doctorate on many things that ultimately do not have a practical bearing on the world. And I wanted to, I really was just trying to be useful. That's the optimization. It's like, what can I do that would actually be useful?
Do you think people that want to be useful today should get PhDs?
Mostly not.
So what is the best way to
Some
be useful?
yes, but mostly not.
How should someone figure out how they can be most useful?
Whatever this thing is that you're trying to create, what would be the utility delta compared to the current state of the art times how many people it would affect? So that's why I think having something that makes a big difference but affects a sort of small to moderate number of people is great, as is something that makes even a small difference but affects a vast number of people. Like the area under the curve. Yeah, exactly. The area under the curve would actually be roughly similar for those two things. So it's actually really about just trying to be useful and matter.
And then when you're trying to estimate probability of success, so you say this thing will be really useful, good area under the curve. I guess to use the example of SpaceX. When you made the go decision that you were actually going to do that, this was kind of a very crazy thing at the time.
Very crazy,
very
for sure.
Crazy.
Yeah, people are not shy about saying that. But I kind of agree. I agreed with them that it was quite crazy. Crazy if the objective was to achieve the best risk-adjusted return, starting a rocket company is insane. But that was not my objective. I'd simply come to the conclusion that if something didn't happen to improve rocket technology, we would be stuck on Earth forever. And the big aerospace companies had just had no interest in radical innovation. All they wanted to do was try to make their old technology slightly better every year, and in fact, sometimes it would actually get worse. And particularly in rockets, it's pretty bad. Like in '69, we were able to go to the moon with the Saturn V, and then the space shuttle could only take people to low Earth orbit, and then the space shuttle retired. I mean, that trend is basically trends to zero. If people sometimes think technology just automatically gets better every year, but it actually doesn't. It only gets better if smart people work like crazy to make it better. That's how any technology actually gets better. And by itself, technology, if people don't work on it, actually will decline. I mean, you can look at the history of civilizations, many civilizations, and look at, say, ancient Egypt, where they were able to build these incredible pyramids, and then they basically forgot how to build pyramids. And then even hieroglyphics, they forgot how to read hieroglyphics. So we look at Rome and how they were able to build these incredible roadways and aqueducts and indoor plumbing, and they forgot how to do all of those things. There are many such examples in history. So I think you should always bear in mind that entropy is not on your side.